Okay, hi guys. We're going to talk about complementary and supplementary angles today. Okay, there's just a couple things you need to really worry about, some key points here. Zoom in and take a look at talking about vocabulary. With complementary angles, all right, you're talking about two angles that add up to 90 degrees, and supplementary angles are two angles where they add up to 180 degrees. Okay. So, for example, example number 1 says identify complements and supplements. So, if we wanted to figure out whether two angles are complementary or supplementary, we're just simply going to look at the angles. So, if we have an angle like this, and we know it's a 90-degree angle, but then maybe I have another ray go like this. And we're going to label these. This one's maybe 30 degrees. That one's maybe 60 degrees. Those two added together would be complementary. So those angles would be complementary. Now I want to erase this here a little bit. Maybe I can erase. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not going to let me erase. Oh well. And the angles don't always have to be connected together. You could just have an angle like this, and let's say it is, again, 30 degrees, and another angle that's shaped like that, and it's 60 degrees. Those added together would be 90 degrees, and that's why they're called complementary angles. They add up to 90. Whereas it's the same thing with supplementary angles, only they add up to 180. So you have an angle measurement like this and another ray. This could be 140, or I'm sorry, forget that, not 140, let's say 70, and this one might be 110. It doesn't look like it, but I'm going to tell you it's 110. So together they add up to make 180 degrees, all right, and that makes them supplementary. So what it should look like, let me draw you a little bit better picture here. Supplementary, if they're 180 degrees, they would make a straight line, right? So it's going to look like that, and maybe got another angle off like that. And so now this could be 110 degrees, and maybe this could be 70 degrees. Okay, and that's supplementary. That's the main thing in this section that we're talking about, is if they're supplementary or complementary, all right? And we kind of hit on that right here at the beginning on the left-hand side, all right, over here, with 90 degrees and 180 degrees being supplementary or complementary. Now, example 2, talking about adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are simply angles that share the same side. For example, our classroom is adjacent to the classroom right next to us because it shares a wall. Okay? If I'm going to draw adjacent angles, they're going to look similar to what I've drawn up above here. Something like that. And then we can say if this is angle 1 and this is angle 2, they're adjacent because they're sharing this common side. He's involved with both angles 1 and angle 2. Okay. To show you what isn't adjacent angles, for example, like this. Let's say you have an angle here. Let's call this angle 1, and another angle like this. This is angle 2. They're not sharing a common side at all. They are their own two separate angles. They don't share a side, so they're not adjacent. Whereas before, these two guys, they share this common ray right here, and he's involved with this angle and with this angle 1 and 2. That's why they're adjacent. Okay? Okay, guys, now in example 3, this is where we're going to do a little bit of algebra. Basically, we're wanting to figure out if I tell you that angle A and angle B are complementary, that means that they're going to add up to 90 degrees, right? And if I tell you that angle A is 45 degrees, then what's angle B? So all we have to do here is set up an equation. So we're going to say angle A is 45. Let's write this over here. So we're going to say 45 plus, instead of angle B, let's just say X equals 90. How do we solve for X? Well, we subtract 45 on both sides. There's 0 out, and X equals 45. So the complement for angle B is 45 degrees. All right, so if they're asking about the complement, simply put, you're wanting your two angles to add up to 45 degrees. You just got to set up an equation and solve for the missing angle. Now let's talk about if they're wanting a supplement. While I try to erase all of this. Actually, let's do this. Shrink this, move him to the side. Shrink him real little, move him up here. There we go. Lots of room. If we said, okay, angle 1 plus, whoops, what did I do there? Here we go. Plus angle 2 equals 180 degrees. That's saying if they're supplementary. So if the book or the paper or something words it, the measure of angle 1 is 120 degrees, what is the supplement of it? Okay, well, if it wants to know the supplement, so it's going to say 120 plus X, because we don't know what angle 2 is, equaling 180 degrees. And again, we just solve an equation like we've been doing. It's kind of why we've been doing those warm-up problems every day. Okay, so now you got X equals 60 degrees. Okay, so those two would be supplementary. Okay, so if it anytime, you just got to remember the vocabulary. If you're talking about complementary or supplementary, it's simply because they want it to add up to 90 or 180. Okay, guys, example 4, we're talking about a theorem. Okay, and these theorems are like true statements. They're proven true because they come from other true statements. I took this picture kind of out of the book because I think it'll explain it kind of the best. So we have two different theorems that we're looking at here. The first one says that, and it's this one here. Actually, let's use the laser. It's this one here. I like the laser. Can you guys tell? If two angles are complementary to the same angle, then they're congruent. So basically what we're saying is, if 1 and 2 together equal 90 degrees, they're complementary, right? But if we also say, and 2 and 3 make 90 degree angles, and they're complementary, then we assume that 1 and 3 are equal angles, okay? So if I were to use some numbers here, if I said this is 30 degrees, that means if it's complementary with angle 2, it would have to be 60 degrees, right? Because they have to add to 90. But then on the next part, if it says angle 2 plus angle 3 equals 90, well, if you're going to take angle 2 here, what does angle 3 have to be if they're going to be complementary? And again, it's going to have to be 30 degrees. Now, what do we notice? That 1 and 3 are congruent angles. They're equal to each other. Okay? So if you got two angles that are complementary to the same angle, and those two angles are 1 and 3, they're complementary both to number 2, then they're going to be equal to each other. That's why they're both 30. The same thing goes with looking at supplementary angles, okay? So let's say angle number 4 here is, again, let's use 70 degrees. He is supplementary with number 5, as it's showing you right here in the example. So that means he's got to be 110 degrees. That way they total 180, right? That's what supplementary means. But then in the next part right here, switch colors. in this next part right here, 5 plus 6 equals 180. Well, 5's 110, so what's that mean 6 must be? He must be 70 degrees. And again, they're equal. Okay? So those two theorems are just talking basically that if they're supplementary or complementary to the same angle, then they've got to be equal to each other, okay? I think a lot of it just has to do with, just use some common sense on the complementary and supplementary and understand what it is they're asking you, okay? So in summary, for our section, I guess the biggest thing we need to know is that complementary angles equal 90 degrees, always. And that supplementary angles always equal 180 degrees. That is the biggest thing you need to take away from this section and to understand how to work around it. Also, adjacent angles. Okay, I forgot about adjacent angles there. We just kind of add this down here. Adjacent angles, they share a side. Just like adjacent classrooms share a wall. Okay? Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you later.